What's going on, everyone? Today was a bloody day in the stock market as 71% of stocks in the S&P 500 closed down in the red, with some big tech powerhouses like Apple, Nvidia, Google, Microsoft, Tesla, and others leading the way down. In today's video, we're going to talk about exactly what's happening in the market right now and some very important things to keep on your radar for the rest of this week. It is an exciting time to be a trader. We are heading into one of the most volatile parts of the entire year, and this is happening as we have big tech powerhouse stocks like Nvidia setting records, but not necessarily in a good way. So stick around. We have a lot of great stuff to cover today and some awesome setups for tomorrow. But besides that, Tom, let's jump right into it.
Yeah, let's go, Mike. That was some pretty awesome movement today in the stock market. The SPY closed down 2%. Remember how we were looking at some stats earlier, a couple months ago, where they were talking about how many days without a pullback of 2% or more? This would have been another one of those pretty bloody days out there. And yeah, as you can see, it was pretty brutal across every spectrum of the market, Mike. Just about every sector was down. Like we see oil was down, producer manufacturing down. Not even like the safer stocks like McDonald's could prevail today. A couple did, like KO and Pepsi, but man, like this is one of the worst heat maps we've seen in a long time. Of course, highlighted by none other than Nvidia, which is down 9.53%. I mean, that is a bloodbath, Mike. And I know last week a lot of people were like, wow, this thing didn't really do much with earnings. Well, I don't know. I guess people had to just take their time and think about it over the weekend.
I know it, but looking a little bit more into this Nvidia sell-off, today was actually the worst day in stock market history in terms of how much a company has ever fallen, as Nvidia dropped by nearly $280 billion just today alone. So that's crazy enough, but diving into this news a little bit deeper, we can see that Nvidia actually got a Department of Justice subpoena where, they're basically getting investigated, and it's certainly not a good look. As we look at Nvidia stock, when you have negative news like this on top of a stock trading at a very aggressive valuation, heading into the worst performing month of the entire year, which is September, it makes for a pretty big imbalance of supply and demand. As we look at a stock like Nvidia, it is extremely popular, which helps it and hurts it. When things are going great, everyone loves the stock better than anything else and buys into the stock and pushes it up higher and higher and higher. But at the same time, when the stock is falling, there's a lot of what I'll call unloyal money with it who have just recently entered because the stock just recently became popular. As soon as things don't seem all that great, the same people who are rushing in to buy at 130 also rush to the exit all at once at, in this case, $108. So basically, there's a lot of just, you could say, fear and greed, extreme emotions happening with this stock right now. There's a lot of sellers hitting this one hard, and the news, at least in the short term, isn't the best. So if you're someone who owns this stock and plans to own it for the long term, that's one story. But in terms of like a short-term outlook with the Tom, it's looking pretty rough.
It really is. Yesterday we actually talked about Nvidia a lot on the Bookmap as well. We were looking at some pretty key supports like 115, which happened to be the low of last week. And, this morning we saw a ton of sellers rush in and wipe that area out on the Bookmap. And we even ended up getting to 110 today, which was pretty insane. That was like the next target, the next big level under 115. But shout out to Bookmap here. There was actually a really good trading opportunity on Nvidia to the downside today. And don't worry, we'll talk about that even more because even SurgeBot hit on Nvidia today. But I loved it, Mike, personally. I know a lot of traders out there are probably pretty pissed that Nvidia is falling down right now. It's down 9%. But realize, guys, we're starting to see the VIX also pop back off. This means that options pricing is going to start to pop up again, right? And we saw that today where there were so many opportunities out there, and the people who adapted into puts are the ones that really prevailed.
No doubt. And Nvidia especially is so important when it comes to the overall market because it has such a heavy weighting in the S&P 500. As we look at this chart right now, we can see Nvidia is the third heaviest weighted company in the entire market. So like when this company is falling by, let's say 10% in a day, it has a pretty bearish impact on the market as a whole. And this actually goes hand in hand with the broader seasonality that we are heading into. What I thought was very interesting is that as we look at the, I guess you could say, performance of 2024 compared to the performance of 2023 for the S&P 500, they are like shockingly similar, especially when you look at a chart like this. What's worth noting is that the month of September is a really historically bearish part of the year for the market, and this goes all the way back to 1950, so that's 75 years worth of data, give or take. What I thought was very interesting though is that we saw this same sort of sell-off happen at like the same time last year for the market, and when we look at September seasonality more specifically, like on this chart here, we can see that a lot of times the sell-off doesn't truly get into like full effect until like the end of September, but it looks like we're starting early this year, Tom.
Yeah, and we've shown this a couple times where, it seems like at the beginning of September, it's actually kind of flat to slightly up, but then the second half of September is like the worst second half of any month of the year. So it's interesting, right? But obviously not every month is going to be the same, but I love looking at these type of seasonalities, Mike, and I think that right now the overall sentiment is obviously that September's a bad month. There's a lot of traders out there in the Discord today, on Twitter and etc., just going like, oh my gosh, September's living up to its name, And I think that with where the market is now, we have to realize it's probably in a different spot than most other Septembers. How many other Septembers can we say that the S&P 500 is almost perfectly double topping, right? Like it's very, very rare that we see that, of course, right into September, but it's a weird time, Mike. Not every year's the same. So I don't know, maybe traders are having that bearish sentiment come in a little bit earlier this time.
And rightfully so, especially given the election year and, like you said, the heavy resistance overhead. But as we look, I guess you could say, at the events this week, a little bit more specifically, we have a handful of earnings on the lineup, which should make this week a little bit more exciting than average.
Yeah, definitely. So tomorrow, Dix is reporting in the morning. In after hours, we have AI reporting, HPE, and ChargePoint. So tomorrow's pretty big, and Thursday is definitely the biggest day of the week for me. We have NEO and Fuel Cell in the morning, then AVGO or Broadcom, Path, and DocuSign in after hours. So quite the lineup there to end the week, Mike. And then Friday, I guess we have big lots, but not too much on the radar Friday.
All right, and then looking at the economic schedule, we do have a handful of big events throughout the week there. Tomorrow we have some Jolt job openings 30 minutes after market open, and as the week goes on, there are a couple other of, I guess you could say, important economic events, but nothing too crazy, and as the week progresses, we will touch on those more in depth. But as we look at, let's just say, the overall market, as we look at SPY, what would you say are the main levels to keep on watch in both directions for tomorrow?
Yeah, so looking at the SPY here, Mike, like I told you guys yesterday, I cleaned up the chart a little bit, but there's a huge support in the short term right around 550, and that happened to be pretty much the low of day today. It did fall under that ever so slightly, so give or take about 50 cents there, but 550 on the daily chart will be a major support. Now, as I start to zoom in a little bit more, there's some pretty solid resistances, like some levels we broke down below today, like 555, 557, and then 560 overhead. So that's really what I'm looking for, Mike. If we end up breaking under 550, I'm watching 548, mainly 546 after that, and then 544 and 542. So it's like almost every $2 mark underneath 550. But hey, that's where the SPY's been bouncing, and I will say the support and resistances from the past few days played out pretty well today.
No doubt. And as we look at, let's say, SPY and these big tech stocks and everything else in the market right now, it's important to understand that it is a giant game of momentum. When you have big moves in either direction, it causes a lot of emotional trading decisions across the entire market. For example, when you see SPY down 2% on the day, that causes a lot of people to, panic sell and cause even more bearish momentum across the market. And the same could be said with individual stocks. At the same time, of course, the same thing works in the bullish direction, but the key takeaway here is that the more pressure that is put on, let's say, these recent lows with the market, the more the market falls and the more, let's say, bearish news and sentiment that is seen across the market, the worse the selling pressure will become, the stronger and quicker that stocks will fall. So understand this concept as we head into the rest of the trading week, because a lot of times, even though increases in volatility can be, I guess you could say, scary in some senses, a lot of times situations like these ones present the best opportunities for traders, not only because options increase more in these situations than any other time, but also because they provide great opportunities to buy stocks that you've been, let's say, wanting to buy for a while at prices that are, I guess you could say, more favorable. So basically what I'm saying is that there's going to be a lot of opportunity in the market in the short term. Trade in a smart way and get ready for some big moves. But besides that, Tom, let's get a little bit more specific with some setups and predictions. A stock I'm watching very closely right now is Coinbase, and it is in a bearish way. We've been hitting on this stock quite a bit, and we also talked about this one yesterday, but the stock fell down today by nearly 8%. The stock has been consistently making lower highs, and we've been seeing just a lot of chop with the stock over the past couple of months. I am loving how much pressure it's putting on recent lows, and it's getting closer and closer to the $160 support area. So this stock will definitely continue to be on my bearish radar going forward, and I really like the way in which this one moves.
Yeah, it's looking great here in the short term. I know you've been talking about it in a bearish way for a while, and it just keeps on going down here. I know that probably doesn't make the crypto traders happy, but hey, if we're making money out there, who cares, right? With my next play, or first play, I should say, I'm going back to NVIDIA, and we're going back to the Bookmap with this one, but I will say NVIDIA is moving down in after hours in a pretty good way right now. So I'm going to really be watching this one to break below like the 104 support, and then I'll be looking for a $100 push. But looking at NVIDIA on the Bookmap here, it was a pretty crazy day today. As we can see it in the morning, we broke down through some pretty key levels, and of course in after hours here, we're breaking 110 in a really good way. Well, $100 is going to be the next major level to watch for. You can see that on the Bookmap here, right at the bottom, where all those buyers were stacked up today. I'll guarantee you they'll be there tomorrow as long as it opens above 100, because it's one of the bigger levels you can have, right? Especially when you're talking about psychological levels too.
Big time. All right, good stuff there. Another stock I'm watching pretty closely is SMH, and it is also to the downside. SMH is somewhat similar to the NVIDIA play that you just talked about, in the sense that it is very closely tied to the semiconductor/chip stocks. SMH has been continuously making lower highs over the past couple of months, and it is flushing pretty hard, especially as NVIDIA is dropping the way it is right now. But either way, looking at SMH, there's a lot of selling pressure with this area of the market, and when this one moves, it tends to move in a pretty momentum-driven way, which is a great thing for short-term trading because the moves tend to be pretty smooth and consistent, but also powerful. So either way, SMH is definitely on my bearish radar going forward, and understand that this trade is not just a setup for tomorrow, but even one for the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and how could it not be with the way that these chip stocks are starting to move here in the short term? It's a little bit unfortunate to see, but hey, we have to capitalize on these moves, because sometimes the downside plays can be the better ones to play, right? Especially whenever the options start popping up as much as they can. With my next setup, I'm looking at SQQQ. Now, this stock will be a bullish play in a way, because obviously you'll be playing SQQQ to the upside. So this rises whenever the QQQ falls. So that's essentially how this goes. It has a super strong negative correlation to the overall market because of that. And tomorrow I'm looking for a nice pop up above the high of day today around 907 to 905. If we see that happen in the morning and we start to see QQQ and the SPY flushing under their lows from today, which is on the QQQ's case right around 459.50, then I'll start to look at this one a little bit more. But I had to bring up SQQQ, Mike, because whenever the market's dropping, these stocks do amazing, like 9%. I thought Nvidia was crazy today too, but man, even SQQQ had a big move.
Big time. All right, well, great stuff there. And besides that, Tom, let's jump right into today's momentum plays. And with the first one, we have QQQ to the downside.
Yeah, I feel like the Bulls aren't going to be happy tonight, Mike. But, sometimes that's just how it is. We're looking at 459.50, which is that support I talked about earlier.
I don't know if any Bulls are happy today. When you look at that heat map, it was a sea of red. But with the next one, we have Enphase also to the downside.
Yeah, ENPH, pretty bearish day here. If they break under 112, then keep watching them down as well.
All right, and then with the last one, we have Boeing also to the downside.
Yeah, poor Boeing. I mean, they were selling off in a massive way this morning. If they fall under 158, then keep watching for them to the downside. It's getting worse and worse for poor old Boeing here.
I know it. So we have Boeing, Enphase, and QQQ on watch for potential day trades to the downside tomorrow. If and only if they break through the levels Tom listed, the stronger and more consistent these stocks move, the better the setups become. The more pressure on the low of days that that happens with these stocks, the more selling pressure that reflexively comes into them, and that just drives the stock into like this negative bearish feedback loop. So either way, keep these three stocks on watch for tomorrow. And besides that, let's jump right into today's $2.3 million big money trade, and we are looking at ticker symbol MSTR. So MSTR is a stock that has been crushing it over the past couple of years, but over the past couple of months, and especially the past couple of weeks, the stock has been struggling quite a bit. Today, the big money put $2.3 million into the 123 strike put options that expire on October 18th of 2024. Looking at this stock more specifically, these put options are already in the money. These options have around 45 days worth of time to them, and we're just seeing a lot of profit taking and I guess you could say everyone rushing to the exit all at once in the stock market right now. There's a lot of panic that's slowly creeping in across the entire market. As we look at MSTR, there is clearly no exception with this one. Basically, with this stock, the big money is betting that the stock will fall lower. The lower falls, the more they'll make. And looking at this big money trade, I like the reward to risk skew in the sense, especially considering that these options are already in the money and there's a good amount of time to them. Understand that, of course, a bearish play on a stock like MSTR is naturally risky, but that comes with the increased reward, especially in the event we do see a further sell-off. So either way, very interesting big money trade.
Yeah, I like it quite a bit here. It's falling off. It's flushing today, down 7.63%. My only slight worry is that like around where it closed today is pretty much right on a major support line, like right around 120 to 122. So I will be watching for that over the next couple days. But like, let's be real here. Today was a pretty bloody day, and we're starting to see a lot of stocks start to flush down. And, if the SPY keeps flushing down in the short term, just don't be surprised if MicroStrategy follows it down. It's not something that is super... it's not known to be super correlated to SPY, but over the past year, it does have a pretty good correlation to it. So nonetheless, it's a stock to keep on the radar. It has a lot of wild moves too. That's one thing that I really like about MSTR, Mike, is even like while it's been flat and choppy over the past couple years, some of these moves are pretty significant. Like even from the recent low to the recent high, we're talking like a 50% jump in just a few weeks. And, some of these, obviously I'm nitpicking the lows on some of these, but I mean, these 50% moves are no joke here.
No doubt about that. So, the stock is a volatile one, which is good and bad, of course. When there's upside volatility, that works against the play, but when there's downside volatility, it definitely makes for some pretty skewed rewards. So, either way, keep this one on watch. But as we look at MSTR and NVIDIA and SPY and everything else in the market, I am very excited right now. Not only are we heading into the strongestly, I guess you could say the strongest momentum-filled part of the year, which is the month of September, which has the strongest, most consistent downside moves. But we're also, in a situation where the S&P 500 is very close to its all-time high. There's a lot of overhead resistance. We have powerhouse stocks like NVIDIA moving in some seriously momentum-driven ways. We have the election coming up pretty soon as well, so there should be a lot of great opportunities coming up over these next couple days and weeks. Let's continue to trade in a smart, disciplined, long-term oriented way. When there's big moves, whether they are in your direction or against your direction, it's important to make sure you position yourself to, I guess you could say, just manage the situation in the best way possible. For example, there were a bunch of people who crushed it with NVIDIA put options today, but I'm sure there were also many people out there who got smoked by NVIDIA today, and that's okay as long as you position yourself in a way that aligns with your risk. For example, there's nothing wrong with, taking a trade and losing, because who can win 100% of the time? But there is something wrong if you're placing a trade and you have no idea where your stop loss is or anything like that. So the reason we say these things in these videos is to help people better be prepared for the market going forward. So make sure whatever trades you take, especially throughout this week, make sure you have a plan before you enter the trade. Know where you'll take losses and profits regardless of where the stock goes. Follow the money and just trade with smart, long-term oriented habits. If you guys are into short-term trading, definitely check out the first link in the description in the comments down below to get in on the stocked up trading floor. We hit it out of the park today in multiple different senses. Our surge bot crushed it with some NVIDIA put options. We had some NVIDIA 110 strike puts alerted at $154. These popped all the way up to $445. So just under 200%. Our SM bot also hit it out of the park as well, as it went off all day long. Some of the put options on this one popped up by 250% with AMD, 232% with Netflix, 223% with Pepsi, and many other ones. So definitely check that out. And then also we have to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Easy Peasy in the stocked up trading floor, that did very, very well with CLDX and TSM, just to name a few. So keep up the great work, Easy Peasy, and we really appreciate messages like the ones that you left in the Profits channel. Thanks for being a great member, and besides that, Tom, I think we're set for a pretty exciting week.
Yeah, we definitely are, Mike. And hey, don't forget about some of the economic data tomorrow as well. The JOLTS job openings could be a pretty big deal. Now, of course, the main thing is hey, is it going to end up hitting expectations or not, right? If we miss expectations by a lot or we beat it by a lot, that's where we'll probably see the majority of the movement there. But be ready at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And also just don't forget the earnings, guys. Go ahead and take a screenshot if you need one here.
There we go. And then again, if you want in on the stocked up trading floor, our coupon code 100K will expire this week. We launched it towards the end of last week as a special for hitting 100,000 subscribers. So you save a bunch with the yearly plan. Again, if you want in on the trading floor and access to all of our bots, live events, big money trades, access to Tom and myself all day long, as well as everything else you could possibly need as a short-term trader, it'll be that first link in the description and the comments down below. Besides that, thank you all so much for watching, and let's crush it this week.